Thank you so much, everyone who is joining in and watching us today. I am Ryan, content specialist over at Solar Insure, and today I am delighted to be joined by Matthew Daniel, the 48-volt product manager at Fortress Power. And Matt, thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with Solar Insure, talking about Fortress Solutions.
Yes, I'm very excited. We were talking just before we started recording, and there's a ton of great info that I want to dive into because you're just a wealth of knowledge, and you're on Video Man yourself on all of the product sites. So for everybody watching, you can go to the Fortress site, the Fortress page, and you can see Matthew over there too. But I'm really excited here because even in just the little bit of time that I've got to spend looking at the Fortress equipment, it is so incredible to see what you guys have done with the battery technology you have and what you can provide to homeowners. So, I am so psyched to see this just go to the absolute moon as we continue here. But we're going to get into the company, get into the products, and then, of course, talk about customers, that ideal customer, what they can benefit, problems you guys solve. So, first off, before we dive into anything else, you want to give us a quick introduction to yourself, how long you've been with Fortress, how you found yourself here.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I've been with Fortress since back in 2021. It was actually my first job out of college. I applied to many jobs that had to do with the renewable energy sector because I just believe in harnessing, the most potent energy in Earth, which is the sun, right? And how that can impact, well, I say the world, but back then, or it's I live in Puerto Rico, so how the energy could impact Puerto Rico, right?
Yeah,
But it starts small, right? That sort of passion drive starts small, and then hopefully it turns into something great and big. And
clearly have.
yeah. I started in the technical support field within Fortress Power, so giving tech support to our installers, and that evolved into being the product manager. I'm truly passionate about Fortress Power. I think Fortress Power's drive, are my mentors within Fortress Powers, particularly Jing and Eric, who are just they uh they can adapt to a lot of changes into the market and things that are happening, especially with policy changes and stuff like that. And I can relate to that survival instinct to want to give a good product and make an impact, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So it's actually really great too. You said you live in Puerto Rico. You're in Puerto Rico currently.
that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Huge market, I imagine, for Fortress, right?
The green infrastructure in Puerto Rico has been decaying and decaying rapidly throughout time, and the need for solar and energy storage has been rapidly increasing, right? To support grid infrastructure stability. Fortress Power actually is part of a BPP program that allows to discharge the batteries to support the grid infrastructure, right?
Hmm.
And we do that with our Envy Inverter, and now with the E-Force, and back then E-Flex, and now currently E-Flex Max and Evil Max products. Where basically, Luma, which is the utility company, right? They contact us, and we dispatch a discharge event to Luma to help alleviate some of those loads within each residence.
That's awesome. I think it's such a unique and well, we won't spend too much time on the Puerto Rico
Right.
grid because that could be its own entire video. But
Hmm.
it's such a unique microcosm for like almost what a larger grid could be, where you have all of these kind of small distributed generating sites that are all working together.
Hmm.
It feels almost like it's like a community, right? Where it's a community thing that like we're all working together to like keep the grid going, as opposed to just big generation sites, wherever that's trying to do it. It's a very unique, like interesting market.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. Like I said, we participated in Puerto Rico, but we've participated in the same similar events in California, North
Mhm.
Carolina. Utah, and even Connecticut, right? Uh, where they're we are helping incentivize, not only the green infrastructure, but allowing uh, incentivizing the homeowners, and they actually getting paid for these discharge events. So it's a win-win for everyone, right?
Seriously. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, VPP is, I think, such a unique concept that I'll have a video on in the future for anybody watching that we can talk about. But we won't.
Uh-huh.
Let's. I want to get into to Fortress and the product and specifically. So, can you give anybody watching who may not be familiar with Fortress just a little bit about the company's origin? When did it start, and kind of what did inspire you guys to get into that solar battery space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, back in 2000, Fortress Power was founded back in 2016. Fortress Power is a U.S. Based energy storage manufacturer. We're committed to delivering safe, reliable, scalable solutions for residential and now, commercial and industrial applications as well. And our mission is simple, right? We want to empower energy independence through cutting edge lithium ferrophosphate technology, which is what we use in our battery, providing long-term warranties. Right? We were always known to give a 10-year warranty, but now we've also partnered with Solar Insure, providing a more premium long-term warranty of 30 years past the 10-year mark, and then also backed with industry-leading support. Right? We've worked with 100 plus distributors globally, 500 plus installers globally as well, and we've done over 40,000 installations. And to provide that better support, we have our headquarters offices in Langhorne, right? We have a central office in Puerto Rico as well, and in Mexico to support our LATAM customers with warehouse
Amazing.
locate. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying amazing. That's awesome. That
Yeah.
it's so spread, and then also like serving so many people.
Hmm. Yeah, we're very fortunate to do what we do every day, keep the lights on, literally.
Literally, absolutely. Well, so how has the company kind of evolved since it started back in 2016? Because I know in a lot of markets, across the U.S., battery storage really has just popped off in the last couple of years. So, what was that evolution like? And like, were there any major milestones that were kind of hit along the way that you guys are the most proud of?
Jing and Eric, they're both engineers that wanted to get it back into the solar industry. Jing was already in solar.
Mhm.
She was the general manager for a company called Veneco. Um, it's a German PV solar company, and Eric worked in the automotive industry, right? And with that, we've evolved into, well, they gave a solution to say, how can we make systems more reliable, right? And I think Jing saw something within the solar sector that was lacking, and it was the how can I better the current solution? And the current solution back then, although there were lithium solutions, but not quite as much. But back then, the thing that was highly spoken about was lead acid solutions, right? And she kind of took that application and said, how can we better that? And, we developed a solution that actually deployed it to the SEPTA Railway, which is the Pennsylvania Railway Station back in 2016, and basically supply the energy for the traffic light controls, essentially.
Oh, okay. Very cool. That's like very unique way to start
Yeah.
and then just
Yeah.
kind of roll from there.
Yeah, yeah. And then after that, we 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 took the existing technologies and say, how can we make this more robust? Back then, a lot of energy storage systems were using a different type of BMS architecture that was not yet robust. Now they
Mhm.
are, because as the competition has evolved, you have a lot of people invested into manufacturing, right? And so now today that BMS structure is more solid, but back then we sort of turned to a contactor based BMS, which is what the eFlex, or we call it now the eFlex Classic, was. We have an eFlex Max, but the eFlex battery is, and every product that we've modeled afterwards has been taking the eFlex as an example because it was, I guess, light years, or at least 5 years ahead of what it was of the technology, of the current technology, right?
Mhm.
Making it a solid, robust application, not just for residential, but even for marine uses, right? It has a aluminum enclosure that basically allows it to not rust, right? For those high salinity applications.
Very
Yep.
important for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And you make a great segue too because I want to talk more about that product, but like the said it's the contactor
Mm-hmm.
connection between it. Like what does that do for batteries? Like how is that different? How does it what makes that so much more robust than what was existing, maybe still even is existing?
So when you have a contactor BMS, you can allow the conductors internally to be of higher ampacity. Back
Mm.
then, the energy passing through a battery was going through, let's say, a MOSFET BMS, that the current capability was just not there. Right now, you have MOSFET BMSs that can even go up to 300 amps DC,
Wow.
right? And so basically, we did solid bus bars internally in the battery that could withstand that high power capability.
Hmm.
Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
you go
which
ahead.
is really important, yeah, because it's I mean, especially when it comes along to batteries, right? That's that ampacity capability of being able to charge and discharge is everything to a
Hmm.
homeowner who, especially if you're talking like emergency backup, like being able to discharge large amount of power at one time is everything, and then that's the difference between running a whole bunch of stuff in your house or even the whole house and just, keeping the lights on. Like,
That's
really.
correct. That's correct. And you might have even some appliances that not only when you're running all your loads, but the surge capability of those loads, where our BMS technology and our battery technology can easily withstand. Now with the eForce product, we're talking about 190 amps of continuous discharge and charge capability, uh, easily withstanding 9,300 watts on a continuous watt
Wow.
matter. Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, I know I used to work in like suburban Chicagoland area for selling solar, and the majority of houses I'd run into are running 100 amps max. So even that type, like you're pushing just shy of 200 amps max. Like you could easily cover an entire whole home. Like and with that surge capacity, like you said too, that's the thing that people really don't think about with batteries is like, yeah, when you may, be able to run your hot tub or something, right? But like when you
Hmm.
turn it on, it's gonna trip. Like you can't get that high.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool things that I noticed, and like I'm a data sheet nerd. We were saying before we started recording, and one of the things that as I was looking through that like really stood out to me that I have not seen among many other batteries that are out in the market is that discharge rate that it is just so incredibly high to meet customer demands, and then also the expandability to me was huge. Like looking at the eForce, the stackable system can run, is it 16 of those units for what, 153 kilowatt hours in parallel?
So actually, I think I'm gonna give you the exclusive now. So,
Oh.
um, so yes, recently, or when we launched the eForce, the battery was capable of being scalable up to 16 units in parallel, right?
Mhm.
But since then, now we can do actually 32 units, which is a
Oh my god.
combination of 307 kilowatt hours uh,
Oh
of,
my god.
of just true paralleling power. And to give you a little bit of backstory, one of the things that we thought about when we were doing this product is how can we take the best of both worlds, right? I mean, so many things are changing, regulations, policies, NEC Co, NFPA, and we just kind of wanted to, how can we make a battery that can fit all of that and still keep having a sort of elegant look, if I might say, right? I think it's a pretty
Mhm.
good looking battery, and
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Um, but we know that the Evo Max was a battery that you could pair up to 20, giving you about 370 kilowatt hours, and we still use the Evo Max for commercial solutions, but we wanted to
Mhm.
give that flexibility with the eForce product that they can use in a residential or small commercial application as well. Um, so it is very important to to your point, when you were looking to the data sheet, we wanted to take that 1C rated of the eFlex and sort of put that into one box, um, to give that customer a low capability, right? A discharge capability. Now people, while a lot of people are going into more energy efficient appliances, we're also going into EV vehicles, right? And you have level charge to vehicles that demand at least 30 to 40 amps continuously.
Mhm.
And you need an energy storage system that can definitely uh, give that power when needed, not just in the battery, but the inverter that gets coupled to that battery, right?
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you mentioned that too because that's obviously always a huge piece of this. The Envy inverter, I know available in 8 and 10 kW sizes, right? So it can handle up to 15 kW DC input, right?
So you have 8 kW, 10 kW, and 12 kW, right?
Mhm.
And then the 8 kW can handle 13 kW of PV,
Okay,
right? And then the 10 kW can handle up to 15 kW of PV, whereas the 12
amazing.
kW can handle up to 21 kW of PV input, right?
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, so you guys are really covering the entire spectrum of what, like you said, residential. I've never met a residential system that's gonna be pretty much any larger than that, or even hitting that small commercial size too.
Yeah. We've used these applications successfully for a lot of residential homes, and now, as you mentioned, commercial. The All of the Envy models are equipped to handle 208 three-phase applications as well. So the requirement would be that you would stack uh, a minimum of two inverters, but regularly people use the 369 kind of configuration, right? Three inverters, one inverter per phase to achieve the three-phase capability.
Very cool. It's awesome you guys have the flexibility to be able to do that. And one of the things that I, especially from like looking at it from an installation standpoint on the residential end, really appreciated in what you guys thought of was the stackability that like the eForce battery has that raceway built in directly to the top of it so that the inverter can just connect
Yes.
immediately on top. So there's no need for like extra raceways or tons of conduit going in, a web of every direction. Like it really does feel like you guys thought of that installation. And what's really kind of that idea behind that stackability, especially when it comes to residential installs?
Yeah, good question. So to address the particular individual units that installer would require, right? You wouldn't require, when you're doing these types of combination when you have a DC coupled battery and an inverter, typically installers would add a wireway, right, to comply with NEC code and hide all the conductors inside, and
Mhm.
then you would have to run a lot of wires, or a couple of wires. 3 aught, 4 aught wires to a bus bar. So you'd also have to include a bus bar, and then the conductors that would go from the battery to the bus bar, and then from the bus bar to the inverters. And we thought about how can we save the installer some money, right? And all be beneficial. And so what we did was included that wire trough, and we call it the e-way, uh, to stack on top of the each individual module, right? In each individual module is 9.6 kilowatt hours. Um, and provide you the comfortability of being able to run your AC into that wire way, right, or the E-way, and
Mm,
then you can stack the inverter on top of it and then run your conductors right on top of it, and still be outdoor compliant.
that's
Um,
huge.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that we also seen is that, we're homes are just are they're space constraint, right? And then there's codes about, how to install an energy storage system within those space constraints. Like if you're going to install a battery in a garage in California, you have to install bollards, right? And I don't think that's literally necessarily the first thing that you want to see when you enter your garage, right?
Yeah,
But
no.
so, we wanted to see how can we, while remaining stackable, right? How can we mitigate for something like that? And if you take that one battery module with an E-way and you wall mount it, because our batteries can be wall mounted 3 feet above, then you don't have to install those bollards. Win win.
Wow. So you can go outdoors and be confident that your battery is gonna be fine and,
Yeah,
like, not just die in the cold.
yeah. Actually, I like that you mentioned that. So yeah, our batteries come equipped with internal heaters. And your typical size, as we've seen with the Evil Max, is roughly around 18 kilowatt hours, when it comes to our products, right? And so we're giving them 19.2 if you install two of the batteries stacked on top of each other, where each module just consumes about 375 watts, right? We're talking about a 9.6 kilowatt hour module.
Yeah, it's fractions.
Right. So by the end of the night, or starting the night, going up the next day, when your sun rises and you have solar uh, power available, you really used half of your capacity.
Mm,
Um, and this is in an outage situation, right?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is so huge, and it's so nice to hear that, you guys have really thought ahead of that because, as like you mentioned EVs earlier, as that's growing and becoming more of a thing in the market, people with EVs like myself notice that in the wintertime when it gets cold out, my range on my car is just half of what it used to be. So like the fact that you guys are thinking about doing that efficiently
Hmm.
really to me signals a company that is thinking about its homeowners and like the long-term needs of not just keeping the batteries safe, which is also awesome, but making sure that you're keeping the product safe and then helping the consumers still do what they need to be able to do with it.
Yeah, right. I feel honestly, I don't know if I swear I didn't rehearse this with you before the interview, but you made a good point, and it was actually part of our investigation when we designed the E-Force. Is I think in the year of 2023, by the end of the year of 2023, you were seeing a lot of EV vehicles that were not operating because of that basically rise of cold temperatures, particularly in places that were not necessarily that high or the very low peak temperatures, right?
Mhm.
Um, and some people were having their issues, and we definitely mean that we have solutions for our existing product, but we want to kind of develop a product that just had all the solutions implemented. And the EV vehicle uh, events of that year definitely help us develop this product for sure.
I love that. I love that. So one of the things I want to talk about too is, of course, batteries and the inverters in them are so much more than just little pieces of equipment. There's a ton of technology in there. As more and more utilities are moving in the country, moving away from net metering practices and into like real time pricing or variable pricing, going up and down. Like, what kind of technologies and software have you guys built to be able to help homeowners to manage that rate arbitrage?
Excellent question. So yeah, utility companies are going more into, certain times of the hour. Naturally speaking, power is going to be more expensive, right? And so we have now developed the technology within our inverter companies for homeowners or even the installer to set weekly uh, operations, right? If you have something, if the utility company is sort of like, hey, these are going to be the days, and we're going to charge X amount of dollars higher during this time period, that's definitely settable in the system, right? What we call it is a forced discharge event,
Mhm.
where we enable that during the times of those utility events, and then basically your system will go into what we call like to in self-consumption mode, right? You will use whatever solar is available at the time, if any, and then it would discharge power to offset the loads and help the utility companies along the way.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, there and that's another perfect example of just, like, thought going into being able to help those because that programmability is so huge because people don't your average homeowner doesn't have the time to be able to sit there and, like, play with a controller or something,
Right.
that's, an exaggerated example, but, like, be playing with it, like, it's good just to have that kind of, programmability built right into the system.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, it's not just the homeowner, and I do say homeowners because you do have a wide range of people that like the do-it-yourselfers, yourselfers, right? The DIY community that um maybe want to go off grid but can at the moment, or doesn't want to, and wants to install the system and offset their loads. So they also want to offset their energy bill, right, if they're grid tied. But that's something we leave to the installers to do, and they're well trained and equipped to do it. We do offer some training on Training Central on how to set up these systems, whether you're going in off grid mode, uh, backup, or using time of use. It's certainly easy, but um, going into VPP as well, right? We are a energy broker for the utility company, and we can do VPP, and for the states and regions that are applicable, um, we do it for them, right? So the utility talks to us, and then we deploy that into your systems, and you can choose to participate or not to participate in that event as well. So I think that's one of the things that people sort of when they hear VPP, they think about, oh, the grid is going to take over control of my systems. And I think it's one of the things that's a myth that has to be kind of debunked. The utility is not going to take over anything. You can choose to participate in these programs. We're just a mediator to get it all working, right?
Yeah, and I imagine in the areas you guys participate in that too, that helps. I know there were VPP area like programs where I used to sell and install solar, and that was exactly right. Like a common myth that I would hear from people is they're like, "Oh, all these middlemen, they're gonna be in there, are gonna get in, like discharge my battery the whole way." So I imagine even those areas that you work with, where it is just kind of a direct conversation with you guys at Fortress, that on its own probably helps to debunk a lot of myth because there's not all those middlemen for people to mistrust.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah, totally. Well, you mentioned the customers, and I want to get into the customers a little bit for kind of the ideal person. But also, just before we dive into that, we talked about the expandability, the discharge, but just in general, like what makes the Fortress equipment and the technology you guys have so unique that allows you to achieve these incredible numbers?
One thing is certainly true is that we're talking about lithium chemistry, right? We're talking about
Right.
actual chemistry interacting, creating an electrical function, right? And when we take the components, or when we work with the cells that we use, you know, we're talking about manufacturing that constantly, you know, calibrates the equipment, because the issue here is when dust gets infiltrated into the production of the actual cell, right? That's what makes it volatile and can combust, right? Whether that you're using LFP or NMC or any other chemistry, LFP is a safer technology, but that doesn't mean that you can just use any LFP battery. LFPs, we're using a grade A cell, right? Um, it gives you 98% efficiency and allows that combination of those processes allows for a more clean discharge and charge, um, when it comes to energy deployment, right?
Yeah, very cool. It's good that like we're talking about the best, the best. I think people don't really realize that either when they're looking at batteries. They think like the battery is better, right? That in their head, for like you say, your average homeowner, you're looking at like, all right, this is a Duracell battery versus an Energizer battery that might buy at like Menards or something, right? But they don't realize that there are like a lot of different specifications that go into making something better than other options out there.
Yeah, yeah. And the secret sauce is what I like to call when you're making these batteries, and it's particularly lithium, is now that you have a BMS system, a battery management system
Mm,
that basically allows you to be able to throughout deploy that power for a longer period of time, right? Uh, we want your battery to last 10 plus years. And I think the secret sauce is honestly on the BMS, because the BMS it's the computer within the battery that basically talks
mm,
to the inverter to tell the inverter, hey, I want you to charge me to X amount. And when it comes to voltage, right? Because batteries operate in voltage. And I want you to discharge me until, this amount. And then that all gets spit out into an SOC. And so when the battery communicates with the inverter, it's telling the inverter all the voltage parameters and everything, but essentially says, charge me when it's at 100%. I'm going to stop working if I get a deeply discharged event, and basically protecting the customer and ensuring longevity of the equipment, uh, and so on and so forth. So,
love that, and that's so important, especially with something that is seen as a the perception being a bit of like a volatile technology, but really it tells you that a lot of thought has gone into making this as longly operating as possible and like really safe.
right.
I mean, especially you mentioned too, right? You guys have a 10-year warranty standard on this, of course, and then solar Insure certified providers can get that 30-year warranty with it as well. And then I was looking at the data sheet too, looking at 8,000 cycle
That's right.
lifetime as well.
8,000 cycles, using the battery at 80% depth of discharge. So that means taking the battery from 100% from 100% to 20%.
Got it. For our people who may not know, like, about depth of discharge, what that means, like, why 80% as opposed to, like, 100? What does that do to protect a battery?
Oh, yeah, good question. So I like to almost, hmm, uh, talk about it like a balloon. When you're inflating a balloon and you're deflating it to such a point, and then you basically break the elasticity of the balloon. That's
Hmm,
sort of what happens with the battery, right? When you're deeply discharging the battery, uh, you are basically degrading the electrolytes internally, right, of the battery, where you can recover the batteries, because we've seen this happen, in our R&D. You can certainly recover the batteries, but you might affect what is called the state of health of the battery. And
got it.
then you're still able to give the power capability, because we can give the power capability, but may not last as longer, right? So instead of you're basically reducing the energy capacity of the battery by discharging it at that event, right? So Fortress Power, at the end of the 10-year cycle, we're guaranteed that you're still remaining with 70% of the capacity. Because batteries will
Sweet.
degrade, whether you use them correctly or not, they will degrade. It's just how fast do you want them to degrade, right? And that number has to be
Right.
small.
Right, definitely. You wanna be able to keep as much of that energy in the battery as possible for you.
Right.
Amazing. I love it. So we're talking then about customers that we're getting into. Obviously, as we've talked about through this conversation, there's a ton of capability for seems like a lot of different homeowners in a lot of different situations. So is there like one ideal customer for a Fortress product or what is the a homeowner who is looking and may be interested in getting Fortress Power energy storage system, like what challenges are they looking to overcome?
One of Fortress Power's motto is that we are flexible. We try to service, I would say, almost everybody, but um, I would say people that are looking for energy independence. If you want your system for backup scenarios, we even seen our systems in apartment uh, applications. Right, they're not looking to use the battery to offset the loads, but rather wait for an outage scenario, right? And they have power available. Uh, a person that is looking to offset their loads, or a person who's looking to go off grid. We actually, uh, the Evo Max, the Evo Max first installation ever in the world was 20 units in parallel for a distributor of Fortress Power that was looking to go off grid.
Wow,
I mean, if that's not the way to prove I mean, and to this day, I haven't had to service, or we haven't had to service any of
amazing.
that of that building. Yeah, it's they have a 50 kilowatt hour or a 50 kilowatt generator, 20 Evil Maxes. That's 370 kilowatt hours of energy storage. And then back then, they did a coupling with Schneider and SMA for
Mm,
the inverter partners, right? Um,
yeah.
and it's just running solid, and we've just taken all that technology and pushed it into the E-Force. So proving reliability for anybody that needs energy storage to offset their loads, looking for energy independence, uh, or looking for backup on the event of an outage.
That's amazing, and you're perfectly right too. That is like such a good proof of concept, and just like not even proof of concept, but just like proof of reliability
Yeah,
that like the first ever installation is something so huge and still operating just perfectly is such like a just a huge thumbs up towards Fortress Power. That like doing everything the right way. So
yeah,
I love that, and really too the broad application for a ton of different homeowners in different situations and businesses just speaks to, that expandability of the product too, that like no matter what your situation is, people can benefit from energy storage and you guys have a solution to be able to serve everybody.
pretty much. Yep,
There I love that.
yep.
So I this has been an awesome conversation. I know you and I could probably keep talking for hours too, but just to kind of wrap up, two last quick things for you. What is one note that you would want to leave anybody watching, listening to this with? Final thought in regards to the Fortress Power products.
I think just let everybody know that Fortress Power is a trusted energy storage partner for all sorts of applications, whether they're residential or commercial. We have track record of proven reliability, resiliency, not just in the product itself, but us as a company, withstanding so many of the changes happening at a global scale, and obviously within the country. And that you talk to us. You have a human live person that you can talk to for any questions and any support that you might need, with incredible knowledge to be able to help you in any way.
I love that, and that's one of the things, the reasons why, especially too, we at Solar Insure wanted to have you guys on our approved vendor list, just because it's that resiliency, that reliability, is of top notch. So we're very excited to be able to have you guys working with us, and I'm pumped to see you guys even continue to explode further than you already have. So very cool. Matthew, I appreciate so much your time in this conversation. Can you let anybody watching know how and what is the best way to contact Fortress Power and be able to get your equipment?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach us at fortresspower.com, where we list all the numbers of distributor partners that we work with, where you can purchase equipment directly, or you can email us at support for any like more design questions or any help with your systems. You can email us or reach us at fortresspower.com/support and just fill on a ticket, and within 24 hours we'll reach out to you.
Amazing. I'll make sure to include that link in the video description for everybody watching, so you can go click on that and check out everything Fortress Power has. But Matthew, thank you so much for joining and lending us your expertise.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.